I'm also here.
And we are recording. Let's see if I can share the screen. No, I can't. I can't share the screen yet. If you can, Yael, get the share screening, that would be wonderful. Or enable me to share the screen. Okay.
Kannst du ihm sagen, dass enabled ist? Ah.
The Schweizerdeutsch.
You should be enabled now. Rav Sinclair, you should
Thank
be
you.
enabled now.
I am indeed. This is it. Here we are. Okay, we're back to normal. Thank you, Yael. Thank you, Mickey.
Pleasure. Sorry for the delay.
We are in your debt, as always. So, I was talking about Coronel, and he was given a prize, actually, by Franz Joseph II of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, because his book, Beit Natan, was published in 1864 in Vienna. That's just a curios. Franz Joseph liked Jews.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Franz Joseph liked Jews. Unfortunately, most of the Austrians didn't. But, and he was really sad when he realized that he couldn't help. In other words,
Hello.
hello?
That's me.
Are we okay?
Yeah.
We ought to be okay now, I think. Okay. So the other version of the Seder of Amram Gaon reflects the Nusach Ashkenaz. They came a long time after the original, of course. Now, does the name Aryeh Leib Frumkin mean anything to anyone here? And I'm going to focus on Anglo-Jews. I want to take you to Commercial Road.
Winemakers.
Anybody respond to Aryeh Leib Frumkin?
Wine cellars?
Wine cellars. Thank you, Brian. Famous wine cellars in the East End, the Frumkins, okay? Now, Aryeh Leib Frumkin was born in Kelm in Lithuania, the great Musa place, connected with Slobodka, and the Lapian family, 1845, died in 1916. His father went to the land of Israel and died there, and Frumkin went to find his father's grave. And he wrote a whole book about all the graves on Har HaZeitim. Now, Frumkin became enamored of Eretz Israel, and he met a rich man called Ovadia Lachman. And Lachman, from Germany, funded Petach Tikva. It was known originally as Achuzat Lachman. If you go into your Wikipedia, you'll find that Petach Tikva was originally Achuzat Lachman. It was a rabbi, and he founded an amazing school. The school taught agriculture, secular subjects, and of course, all Limudei Kodesh. Was a pioneering school in its time, was in Petach Tikva, and eventually, though, he fell out with Lachman. Rabbis and rich funders often have had acrimonious relationships. When the rich man doesn't like the way the rabbi is doing things, he might pull out his money. I'm going to make a snide reference here to Jonathan Sacks, who we'll come back to, and Sir Stanley Carnes. When Sir Stanley Carnes, the rich man, didn't like what Jonathan Sacks was doing, then he just pulled out all the money. And that's what happened. So Lachman pulled out his money, the school closed, and Frumkin came to England. And because of his connection with Petach Tikva and wine, he set up a wine store with his wife and his family. And they created an Anglo-Jewish institution. Kosher wine. Palwin was the kosher wine. What does Palwin stand for?
Palwin Wine Company, Palestinian Wine Company.
Palestine wine. It came through Frumkin's connections with the Yekev, with a winery in Petach Tikva. It became quite an institution. And of course, Aryeh Leib Frumkin's granddaughter was Louisa Libby Frumkin, married somebody called Louis Sachs. And who's son?
Chief Rabbi Sachs.
The late Lord Chief Rabbi Sachs is the great-grandson of Rabbi Aryeh Leib Frumkin, who wrote, amongst many other books, the Ashkenazi version of Seder Rav Amram Gaon. So again, you might not think, but there is an illustrious rabbinical lineage to the late Chief Rabbi. Did you know that, Brian?
I did.
Well, good. So you could have piped up, but you may not have known that Frumkin wrote one of the definitive editions of the Seder of Amram Gaon. Anyhow, that's how we got to Jonathan Sachs and to kosher wine in the East End of London. You never know where your rabbis will take you. Then there was a whole thing with, well, Woolston, I'm going to leave all of this out of it, too Anglo-Jewish. But in the meantime, we can now have people to read. So we will start from the Siddur begins. And Jack, you're the first. The Siddur begins with the morning blessings. Unmute though. There we are.
The Siddur begins with the morning blessings and proceeds to Shachar service. Blessings over food and drink, Mincha Marav, Bedtime Kriyat Shema, weekday Kriyat Torah, Shabbat Shalosh Regalim, including the Haggadah, Rosh Chodesh, fast days, Hanukkah, Purim, Yomim Norim, Tisha B'Av, and life cycle liturgies.
Brit Milah, Birchot HaNisuin, Birchot HaErusin. Doesn't this remind you of the way we have our Siddurim published and printed to this day? That's the order, more or less. And of course, there were all sorts of instructions. What to do, when to bow, when not to bow, when to shake your lulav, how to shake your lulav and the arba minim. Everything that we associate with the Siddur is all the tshuva of Rabbi Amram Gaon, Seder Rav Amram Gaon. Now you can read the next bit too, please. The Seder became.
The Seder begins, the Seder became the basis of all Jewish liturgies to this day. There are several manuscripts, and by comparing them, it becomes evident that over time, different communities added their own customs to the original Seder. As a result, some manuscripts reflect Nusach Sfard, Rabbi Nachman Korona's edition, and others are Nusach Ashkenaz, Rabbi Aryeh Leib Frumkin's edition.
So there we are. Now here's the opening passage of the Seder, the oldest manuscript we have. It begins like this. Amram bar Shashna reish mitivta damata machasya. Amram, the son of Shashna, okay, Babylonian Gaon, 9th century, the head of the yeshiva of Mata Machasya is basically Surah. The Rabbeinu Yitzchak Bereim Gemarana v'Rabbana Shimon, to our master teacher Rabbi Shimon. Where did he live? I told you. Question came from, anybody remember? Barcelona, Spain. So we have from Spain to Surah in Babylon. You, Rabbi Shimon, are dearly beloved by the entire yeshiva. Shalom Rav mirachmanut hashamayim alecha v'alzarecha. And you should have heavenly mercy on you and on your children. And all of Israel that are there in Spain. Su shalom mimenu min Rav Tzemach avi bedin Israel. And you should have peaceful greetings from us and from Rabbi Tzemach, who's the Av Betin, the Dayan. And all of the yeshiva light, as they say, the yeshiva people in Mata Machasya. Shekulam b'shalom, we're all well. Chachamim tamidim v'achen Yisrael shurim kan, doing fantastically here in Babylon. Shetamid anu shoalim b'shlomchem, but we're always concerned about you. V'zochrim etchem b'zikaron tov, we remember you well and for good. U'mitpalelim ba'dechem, we daven for you. U'mavakshim rachamim alechem, and seek mercy. She'rachem brichu b'rachamav harabim. God should have mercy on you. V'yagen alechem, v'yatzil etchem, save you and defend you, mikol tzar v'nezek, from every trouble and damage, umikol choli umachov, and all illness, umishilton ra. What's a shilton ra? Evil governments. You never know which non-Jewish government is going to turn on the Jews. Umikol minei mashchit, umikol minei puranot hamidrashot ba'olam, and anything bad. V'yimalei brachamav rabim kol mishal libechem, and all your desires should be fulfilled. Shagar lefaneinu Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Rabbana Yitzchak. Now your emissary came with a caravan, and what did he bring? If you send a question to the Gaonim, what do you send with the question?
Kesef.
Money, lots of money. Okay? Asara zuhuvim, 10 golden, big gold coins. Sheshidra laishiva, that you sent. Thank you very much for your gift. Hashem hey shalanu, 5 for us. The hey lukupa shel yeshiva, 5 for the staff, 5 for the running of the yeshiva. And you should continue to be well. You wanted to know the order of tefillot and brachot for the whole year. And we know this because we didn't show this by heaven. We are the fount of all wisdom about things Jewish. And we are now going to write it all down according to our traditions in the Babylonian yeshivot. And they go back to the Tanaim and the Amoraim. The Talmud becomes the source of Jewish life in many aspects, but most important, prayer. The Tanya Rabbi Meir Omer, and we start with a statement of Rabbi Meir. We have to make 100 blessings every day. Uvigemara Deretz Israel Garsinan, and in the Yerushalmi we read Tanya b'shem Rabbi Meir, Ein lecha adam Yisrael she'eno semea mitzvot b'chol yom. Every Israelite does 100 mitzvahs every day. As it says, V'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elohecha sho'el mimcha. This is in the Torah, the book of Devarim. Moshe is saying to Israel, what does the Lord your God ask from you? So if you were going to play with ma, what would you get? Al tikre ma elamea. In other words, what does God want from you, Israel? He wants mea, 100 brachot every day. But David Melech Israel tiknan. According to the Midrash Rabbah, David, the king of Israel, instituted them. Actually, the Midrash Rabbah says a little more, says that David was finding that 100 people were dying every day. What did he do? He said, let's make 100 brachot. And nobody died, which was handy. But we have no record of those from King David. Answer, again, the Gaonim were very kind of ahistorical. We should have found somewhere in perhaps the book of Tehillim a reference to this, but we didn't. So they were forgotten, and the Tanaim and the Moraim had to recall the past. And this is very typical of halakha, things that we have. They always were. We may not have a record, but sometimes they were forgotten. And there was a break in the link of transmission, and that link is filled in by later authorities. Beseder elu mea brachot, kach heshiv Rav Natronai, bered hilai, reish metivta damata mechasya, livnei kahal alisena. That is Lucena. Now, Rav Amram begins his Siddur with a reference to his predecessor, who was Rav Natronai Gaon, and he wrote a tshuva about these 100 brachot. Now, Rav Natronai wrote it to the congregation of Alisena. Where is Alisena? Alisena is, of course, Spain. It's Lucena in Andalusia, southern Spain. And this city had a Jewish majority from the 12th until the 15th centuries. The Rif was there. He founded a yeshiva in Lucena. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Gayat, as we used to say, the Ritz Gaius, but Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Chayat, and Rabbi Yosef ibn Migash. Who was Rabbi Yosef ibn Migash's star pupil? Harav Maimon. And who was Harav Maimon's son? Rambam.
Rambam. Yeah.
Rambam. And Rambam refers to Rabbi Yosef ibn Migash as an amazing intellect, as somebody who was frighteningly brilliant. He says, Oto Adam Mavit, a frighteningly brilliant man who knew everything. So there's a chain. Lucena, you should know. But the question was, and this is a question that is actually a good question to this day. Of these 100 brachot, what are they? Well, they are the brachot.
They start with 18 times 3.
Yeah, but you got a lot more than that, Bernie. You start the day off in the morning with Lasech Vivina. When you hear the sound of the cockerel, the alarm clock in the Talmud is your cockerel, okay? So you say Shenatan Lasech Vivina. When you're in bed and you hear the sound of the cockerel, you say the bracha. Then when you open your eyes, what do you say? Pokeach Ivrim. And when you stretch out your limbs, you say Matir Asurim, who stretches out our limbs. And then when you put on your clothes, what bracha do you make? Balbish Arumim. And then when you get up, what do you say? Zokef Kefufim. And when you put your feet on the ground, what do you say? Thank you, Yonat and Debbie. Rokaratz alamayim. And when you go, what do you say? Hamechin mitzadei gaver. And then when you put on your belt, what do you say? Ozer Israel bigvora. It's with an aleph, Ozer. That's a belt. And when you put on your gartel, and when you put your hat on, what do you say? Oter Israel. Oter is to put on a hat. And when you wash your hands, what do you say? And when you wash your face, you say Hamavir Cheveshena Meinai Utnuma Meapapai and a whole lot of other things. Well, that's quite a few, but then we come to you, Bernie, and we've got all the Amidas, okay, and you've got the rest of the prayers. But we do have a whole lot of stuff that goes on in the morning when you get up. And we've got Birchat Torah, and we've got Elohai Neshama and Asher Yatzar, and etc. Yeah. So, question is, how do you do these? How do you do these? Do you do them as I just said? The Gemara Masechet Brachot is very clear. What does the Gemara say? When do you make these brachot in the morning? When you do the acts. When you open your eyes, you hear the cockerel, Lasek Vivina. When you wash your hands, Al Nitilat Yadayim, you put on your shoes, okay? Rokaretz Sha'asadi Kol Tzorki. And you come to shul, you've done all of that. But then the question was, okay, that's the Gemara. It's Masechet Brachot. It's also cited in the Tur. But it was found to be somewhat difficult to do all of this. And now we're going to read what Rav Natronai paskin for the whole Jewish world. So,
Problem particularly on Shabbat when the Shemona Esrei is reduced.
exactly. So what you have to do is you have to eat and drink a lot. And this is dealt with in the poskim. And they say you can in fact make the same bracha more than once because brachot, safek brachot, lahakel. But what you do on Yom Kippur, Bernie?
Sorry.
That's tough. Okay? But we're so holy on Yom Kippur. Or
We have the whole day to look for solutions.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. We haven't found a solution yet. But
100 blasts instead.
100 blasts, there's not really a separate bracha for each one, Brian, even by any stretch of imagination. So what did Rav Natronai paskin? He said, "Levarech kol achat v'achat b'sha'ata, kemo shemufurash b'perek haroeh, ifshar." We cannot. In other words, the tshuva comes to deal with a real living situation. The questioner said, it's very difficult for us to do this. We can't get these brachot all done because we don't know the nusach, we forget. So what can we do? But ifshar, and then there are technical problems. Your hands are not pure. Or mishnato. So what we do now is something entirely different. We wake up, we wash our face, our hands, and our feet as we should, and then because it says "Hikol nikratcha Elohecha Yisrael, v'chol yachid v'achid chayav bahem, u'minhag kol Yisrael b'Sfarad hiaspam yakachu." להוציא למי שאינו יודע של הציבור, the Chazan says it all. כשהשיב רב נתרונאי בר הילאי. So Spain accepted Rav Natronai's psak. They didn't know, they weren't pure, they couldn't get it right. So what did they do? Now the Chazan and the Kihila begins the morning service with Birchot HaShachar. Before that, in the days of the Gemara, there's no such thing as all these Birchot HaShachar being said in shul. Things change, things develop, and the Tshuva did its thing. It established order. To this day, by the way, the followers of the Gaon of Vilna will say that you should say all these brachot before you come to shul. Okay? So that's why we have the custom of beginning with Rabbi Ishmael Omer and the Kaddish de Rabbanan. But old Nusach Ashkenaz and the Sfaradim too say we don't get it all done before, so we have to do it in shul. And so the custom became to start with Birchot HaShachar in the Tefillah. There's a lot to be said about Siddur of Amram Gaon. I'm not going to say any more because we're going to focus on two specific tshuvot that are actually exceptionally dramatic in their importance. But before that, say a little about another long tshuvah that was absolutely seminal in Jewish life. So, Brian, did you read? You're next.
Rabbi Shiur Gaon's Responsum,
Yeah.
known as the Igeret Rav Shiur Gaon, is a book-sized responsum penned by Rabbi Shiur ben Hanina Gaon in Pumbedita in
Pumbedita
987.
was the other yeshiva, okay? The Oxford and the Cambridge was Surah and Pumbedita. Okay, this is in 987, a century later, and addressed to
Rav Yaakov ben Nissim of Kairouan. In this
Kairouan.
responsum,
Where is Kairouan? No, it's not Cairo at all. Kairouan is in Tunisia. It was a very famous Jewish center indeed. It actually is related to the word caravan. That comes from the Arabic Kairouan, caravan, center for caravans. And Rabbeinu Hananel and Rabbeinu Nissim were both operated in Kairouan, and the Rif was there with heading a yeshiva before he went off to Fez in Morocco. Kairouan. So let's go back there. Rabbi Jacob ben Nissim of Kairouan. In this responsum,
Shiur Gaon details the development of rabbinic literature from the time of the Tanaim through the periods of the Amoraim, Savarim, and Geonim.
Now, the Amoraim conclude the Talmud. Between the Amoraim and the Babylonian Geonim, there were Savoraim, and they contributed to the Babylonian Talmud a lot of sugyot that are concerned with the meaning of words. They are Savoraitic sugyot, and it's a shame we don't have time to talk about them, but they are there. If you ever learn the first parak of Kiddushin, very quickly you realize you're in a Savoraitic sugya, not an Amoraic one. Anyhow, he determines
the dates of the compilation of the Mishnah, Tosefta, Braitot, Midrash Halacha, and the Talmudim. The Igeret also deals at length with the Geonim and their works culminating in Rabbi Shiur's own time. It exists in both a French, Aramaic only, and a Spanish, Aramaic and Hebrew, recension. The two recensions differ on the question of whether the Mishnah was written by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi or only redacted by him.
That's just an interesting point, okay, that is concerned scholars to this day. Did Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi actually decide the law, or was he simply reporting earlier traditions? Adolf Neubauer
Adolf Neubauer produced the first scientific edition of the Igeret in 1877, and Rabbi Dr. Menashe Binyamin Levin included both recessions in his monumental 13-volume work, Otsar HaGeonim.
Which is on all Shas. If you don't know what the Geonim said about Shas, you open up the Otsar HaGeonim. Adolf Neubauer, typical 19th century Wissenschaft des Judentums figure, had a very good traditional education, went off, learnt languages, philosophy, science, mathematics, and geography. He was a specialist in the geography of the Talmud and started the whole field of where these places are. Places mentioned in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. He wrote 20 books and 300 articles for various learned societies, lived in Paris. He also lived in England, and he became the cataloger of the Hebrew manuscripts in the Bodleian Library. And he was a tremendous, tremendous scholar indeed, and originally from Romania. But he could never get to be a professor because he was too Jewish. And you couldn't get to be a professor then, but they made him, and he couldn't even be the chief librarian, but there we are. He wasn't able to see by the end of his life because after 20 books and 300 articles, his vision wasn't very good. But he is in fact the man responsible for the Hebrew collection in the Bodleian Library in the University of Oxford. So, no, Neubauer. A lot about him, but we're going to press on. Marcel, you're next. Thank you, Brian. Igeret Rav Shiur Gaon.
Igeret Rav Shiur Gaon is the foundation, is a foundational historiography of Jewish law, and all later authors in the field use it as their starting point.
So I've given you another seminal work, just as our liturgy draws from the Shuvah of Gaon Rav Amram. Our understanding of Jewish legal history, the stage of development of the oral law, is all based upon Rav Shiur Gaon's Igeret. And everybody who wrote after him goes back to him. That's some idea of the tremendous contribution of the Gaonim to Jewish life. Now, what I want to go into now is an interesting modern case, okay? Let's see. Marcel, can you give us the opening line, please?
The question of determining Jewish identity arose in 1962 in Israel in the famous case of Brother Daniel, a Carmelite monk born to a Jewish mother who wanted to enter Israel under the law of return 1950 and be registered as a Jew for the purpose of becoming an Israeli citizen by right.
Hey,
In his
Brother Daniel. Do you remember? I assume that you remember the case, okay? Would everybody please mute themselves? Thank you. The case of Brother Daniel, very famous. His name was Yitzchak Rufeisen, Oswald Rufeisen. In Hebrew, it was Yitzchak. During the Shoah, he was extremely courageous, saved a lot of Jews. Eventually, he found refuge in a Catholic monastery belonging to the order of the Carmelites, and he eventually converted to Catholicism, and he became a Carmelite monk. Okay, now he was in Poland, of course, and he left Poland. He always wanted to go to live in Israel, and he wanted to be a Carmelite monk in the land of his co-religionists. He never ever disguised his Jewish identity, proud of being Jewish, but he was a Carmelite monk. So he wanted to go to Israel and presumably help out and perhaps convert a few souls. Whatever the case may be, he didn't have any citizenship at the time that he left Poland, because when he left, he was told that he would no longer be a Polish citizen. So he came to Israel, wanted to become immediately an Israeli citizen. The question was that there is a law. The law says that any Jew has a right to automatic citizenship in the state of Israel, and can Brother Daniel, as he was then, become an Israeli citizen because he is a Jew. Halachically speaking, is he a Jew? Well, one's instinctive answer is yes. Why? Because he was born to a Jewish mother. And therefore, halachically speaking, he is a Jew. Now, what was the decision of the Supreme Court? Before we get there, can you, Bernie, read from in his erudite judgment?
Is his erudite judgment, Moshe Zilberg J., dealt with the halachic status of a mumur / meshumad.
Now,
Namely-
these are people who have left the faith. Mumur is a serious sinner, and meshumad is somebody who's actually converted out of Judaism to a different faith. So, namely, an apostate Jew.
An apostate Jew who has left the Jewish faith and converted to another religion. He cites a responsum of Rabbi Yehudai Gaon of Sura from 757 to 761, according to whom chalitza is not required in the case of an apostate.
We will forgive
Yavam.
Polish accent, yes.
Yeah.
Yavam, okay, apostate. Now, what's the story here? According to the Torah, if two brothers are living in the same place, more or less, that was how it was in the times of the Torah, the older one marries, dies with no children. What does the younger one need to do?
If he dies, he has to marry his widow and
He has
have
to marry his older
his brother's name. And if he won't do that, the wife takes off his shoe and spits at him. It's called halitza.
On the ground, not on him, on the ground in front of him. That's how it's done. Okay, so but this is
And his marriage is quite simple. He can simply move in with his Yavama.
He moves in with his Yavama, exactly. Move in with your Yavama. That's the thing, yeah. So, this is a biblical law, and there is a release. The Torah itself says, what happens if the younger brother says, I don't want to marry my older brother's widow, and I don't want to have a child, and that child will, as it were, represent my dead older brother? No. Then he has a right to refuse, but he's really shameful because he's not continuing the family line was very important in biblical society for Israelites and is important for us today. Hence, Israel is in favor legally of posthumous sperm donation because of the idea of continuing the family. So it in fact lives in most contemporary times, the idea of taking sperm from a dead person, using it to fertilize his spouse, say, I mean, it'll be his widow, and producing a child after his death without him ever having consented, because the idea of continuity is assumed to be so strong. And one of the proofs that the secular court brought was the idea of yibum, which is called levirate marriage. Now, chalitza is the release. In other words, if the younger brother says, no, I don't want to move in with my older brother's widow, then he has to reject her. And there's a ceremony involving a shoe and spitting on the ground in front of the recalcitrant younger brother and saying things like, you know, you're a pretty nasty piece of work, that you won't allow your older brother's line to be established. But there we are. Now, the question that was addressed to Rav Yehudai Gaon of Sura was, what happens if the younger brother has become an apostate? He left Judaism and has become, I don't know, a Zoroastrian or something else. And he's not likely to give chalitza. He's not likely to participate in any Jewish ceremony at all. Certainly not if he became a Christian. And certainly not if he became a Muslim. And that could have been the case because the Muslims were already around in the 7th century. And we're talking about the 8th century. So you have a situation where a woman, the widow, cannot remarry because she needs chalitza from her husband's younger brother. It's a type of aguna situation. So this was the question posed to Rav Yudai Gaon, and the answer is a very interesting one. We have it in the Mordechai Masechet Yevamot, Ikad Nisva Ba'ala Havi Yavam Mumar, if at the time when the woman was married to the older brother, the younger brother was already a mumar, already a serious sinner and an apostate to Judaism, or from Judaism, lo bai chalitza mine, then there's no need for chalitza. And that's fairly revolutionary, because most of us believe, and even if you convert out of Judaism, do you lose your Jewish identity? No, you don't. And in fact, from the point of view of personal status, marriage and divorce, you are still Jewish. And your wife needs a get, and your sister-in-law will need chalitza from you. And if neither the get nor the chalitza are forthcoming, then that Jewish woman is a aguna. Of course, nobody allows the apostate, one who's become a Christian or a Muslim, to actually do yibum. You cannot say, okay, I'm coming in my cassock and crucifix, I'm happy to marry the Jewish wife, okay, of my older brother, the widow. I mean, he's clearly not going to want to have cholent on Shabbat and Shabbat candles. So we're not going to allow him to take this Jewish woman's soul. But we are insisting that he give chalitza. And that's why the question is framed in terms of chalitza. And Rav Yudai Gaon, surprisingly, for most of us, I'm sure, says doesn't need chalitza. Does that mean that you can deprive somebody of their Jewish identity in terms of personal status, marriage, and divorce? Now, that's highly unusual, but it was brought to the attention of the court in the Brother Daniel case. Jeff, I can see you there. So would you read from this responsa, please?
This responsa was presented to the Supreme Court as a halachic precedent in favor of the view that Brother Daniel could not be recognized as a Jew for a person becoming a citizen of the state of Israel under the law of return.
In other words, certain types of Jew are denaturalized. If you become a mumar or a mishumad, you lose your legal Jewish identity. So even though we all would have said, look, Brother Daniel, married to son of a Jewish mother, traditional family, no worries there, he's Jewish. Unfortunately, we cannot say that he's not, even though he's wearing a cassock and a crucifix, and his Brother Daniel, he's a Carmelite monk. But Rav Yudai Gaon actually gives us a peg to hang on, the idea that perhaps if you become a mumar or a mushumad, you do lose your legal Jewish identity. Now, Silberg J., read on, please.
Silberg demonstrated that this is a minority view, which was rejected by later Gaonim, such as Rav Saadia Gaon, and came under heavy attack by many authoritative medieval codifiers. Authoritative, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read Rav Saadia Gaon. Saadia Gaon, who's also in the 9th century, but later Rav Yudai Gaon is earlier. So Rav Saadia Gaon talks about the issue of an apostate's personal status. He says, and this was a tshuva of his again, in Sinotar Gaonim on Yevamot. You have inquired about a married woman who, having been abandoned by her husband, married a meshumad in Gentile fashion and bore his son. Okay, Jewish married woman, abandoned by her husband, goes off and she marries a Jewish meshumad. Okay, he's become a Christian, a Muslim, a Zoroastrian, in Gentile fashion. And then there's a son. Her husband then returned and divorced her, and the meshumad is a meshumad. Now, is a child a legitimate Jew since his father is considered a Gentile, and the child of a Gentile father and Jewish mother is kosher? Or perhaps the child is a mamzer since his father is fully a Jew, and if he repents, he'll be fully Jewish. But question is, what is the status of a Jewish married woman who's had a child from another Jew? Her husband left her. The other Jew is a Mushumad, became a Muslim. Is he considered to be a Muslim or is he considered to be a Jew? Now, Sadi Gaon, unlike Rav Yudai Gaon, seems to say that your Jewish status, Jewish legal status, is inalienable. You can never get rid of it. So it appears to us the child is a mamzer, not because the apostate father might repent and regain his Jewishness, which was one theory, because his conception and birth were in holiness. No one pays attention to the fact that, to the shmad, the fact that you as a Jew, born halakhic Jew, went off, became a Christian or a Muslim, doesn't affect your Jewish status. You're always Jewish no matter what you do, okay? The law regarding a Meshumad has two aspects. For certain issues, he is penalized. He won't inherit. We can lend him money on ribit, on interest. But for personal status, he's a Jew, always will be a Jew, and the result is that the woman here is penalized because her child is a mamzer. So between Rav Yehudai Gaon and Rav Sadi Gaon, who is right? The answer to that is next week at 8:45, okay, the same channel. But we are going to see, or we're going to learn, that one of the major themes in Jewish history has been the determination of Jewish identity. And whilst most of us think quite correctly that once a Jew, always a Jew, that wasn't always the case. I want to go into the 10 lost tribes. Could you, for example, say that you could never marry, or say if you have an affair with a non-Jewish man, perhaps he's Jewish, okay? And then you might need a get. Or the Shomronim, what happened to them? The Samaritans in the book of Ezra. So were they drummed out of the Jewish people? And is there such a thing as being stripped of your Jewish identity? All of that next week. Stop share. Okay, are there any questions?
Are we starting a 8:45? You said something like 8:45.
Yeah, it's 9:45, right? We've been going
Okay.
for
No, are we starting next week? What time?
9:45, always.
Oh, I forgot.
9:45.
Well, then 7:45.
8:45 is
7:45 Swiss time. 8:45, sorry, Israel time. 7:45 Swiss time. Ian Taylor, are you in Dubai? Unmute.
He doesn't know how.
Doesn't know how to.
Sure he does.
You just press on the big button, the long button. Oh, that's it.
I'm in Abu Dhabi airport now.
Exactly. You looked as if you're either in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, wearing your nice local hat. Okay.
Just came back from Singapore.
Singapore. How are things in the Emirates?
Manic here as usual.
And what's it like for the Jews?
Very few. I didn't see any. Very few. And the minyanim, you have to show your passport. And there are about 3 minyanim. I know where they are. And but there's no WhatsApp list.
It's gone. It's gone underground.
Yes.
One of the guys in Dubai, this guy.
Okay.
Marissa?
All right. Anyhow, safe and healthy travels. Jean.
Brian, before you hang up, you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Brian Greenville. Oh, he's mute. Never mind. Okay.
Brian, you need to unmute.
Unmute.
Ian wants to have a word.
I'm here.
Yeah, did you know I'm Linda Sharp's brother? I was just in London for her 60th wedding anniversary.
Ah, very nice. Very nice. Mazal tov.
Jewish geography. Very nice. Jean,
I
let's
do
get
remember you.
serious.
On page 1, I
Yeah.
was surprised that Rav Amram Gaon is not ashamed to say that we got 10 Zehuvim, 5 for me and 5 for the yeshiva.
Exactly.
Second,
What's wrong?
interesting on the page 2 that we know that the Gaonim had a very big contempt about the Palestinian Gaonim, and here it's surprising that he refers to the Gemara of Israel.
Excellent point. I was wondering if anybody would get that, and if anybody would, it would be you. Okay? But the Talmud Yerushalmi is not the same as the Gaonei Eretz Israel. There were Gaonim in Eretz Israel. Their stature, however, never reached that of the Babylonian Gaonim. And if you remember, Rambam held them in great contempt. So, but the Talmud Yerushalmi was available to the Gaonim. The Rif often cites the Talmud Yerushalmi. So, from the point of view of the Talmud, it is kosher. But certainly in terms of the Gaonim, was only the Babylonians. And they had no time for the jumped up Israeli Gaonim as they saw them. Excellent point, Jean. Okay, so any more comments or anything to say? But we will be pursuing this issue of Jewish identity and the Gaonim and the way in which it was not as we think today, always once a Jew, always a Jew. Things in the past were different. And how different they were, as I said, we'll wait and see till next time. The other great tshuva of the Gaonim we're going to read is the tshuva about the Moredet, the so-called rebellious wife. Okay, we think that the Moredet is stuck, that the woman says, I simply cannot live with this man any longer. There's no way of compelling the husband to divorce her. Well, in Gaonic times, things were different. How different, we will see. But we'll talk both about Jewish identity and how it developed, the legal issue, because that'll take us into Rashi's response as well. And the Moredet goes on to the present day, in fact. The idea that there may be more wiggle room than we think. So on that note, I wish everybody a Purim Sameach. Okay? And we'll continue with the Gaonim next time, the two important issues, and Besorot Tovot, and all the things that we wish each other at this time, and Simcha. Mainly the Chodesh Av should bring us Simcha. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks.
A pleasure. Bye.
Very much.
C'est fini? Ouais.
Oui.
Allez, good evening.
Wo sind Jael und Miki?
Zug,
Weil es wird immer noch aufgezeichnet, das Meeting.
im Zug.
Es wird immer noch aufgezeichnet.